Well, joining me now is the Home Secretary Yvette Cooper. Hello to you.
Good morning, Adam.
Now, you are proposing new measures to deal with the question of deep fakes, of using AI, of children for pornographic purposes. There are laws against a lot of this already. Why do we need more?
So the reason we need stronger laws is because of the way AI is now increasingly being used to put on steroids what was already a deeply troubling level of child sexual abuse online. And it's things like, for example, using AI to more effectively groom and blackmail children and teenagers, or using it to manipulate images of real children and then using those to threaten and abuse children and draw them into further abuse. I mean, it's the most horrific things that we are seeing. The National Crime Agency has been telling us the laws are not strong enough for them to tackle the use of AI, and that's why this is world-leading legislation now that we are bringing in order to strengthen it, in order to take action against these vile perpetrators and keep children safe.
The evidence is that a lot of the people doing this are in fact children themselves, people under 18. Doesn't that make enforcement more difficult?
Well, some of what's happening, you're seeing children being drawn into it, and they're sort of increasingly blackmail and increasingly at the levels of sort of grooming and abuse. There is also a broader issue about what teenagers and what children are seeing online that then is desensitizing them. And that, I think, is deeply troubling as well. So we're bringing in the Online Safety Act measures later this year to have much stronger action requirements on companies to remove illegal images, and then further measures later in the year to increase the responsibility and requirements on them on protecting children online. So you're right, you need all of these things together, the stronger laws and the work of the National Crime Agency to go after perpetrators too.
And I'm just wondering how practical it is to enforce this, given the extent of online messaging of various sorts on the internet and on the telephone system. I mean, can you actually police it?
Well, the work of the National Crime Agency is really important. They currently, I think, have around 800 arrests a month, over 1,000 children safeguarded a month as a result of the work they do on online child abuse material already. But we know, obviously, the scale of this is deeply disturbing, and that's why you have to have greater responsibility and requirements on the tech companies, on the platforms, to be able to tackle this online as well.
And the signs are really that so far the tech companies, American dominated, are not really responding, are they?
So historically, they have worked with the police, and there has previously been really a consensus around child abuse imagery being some of the most horrendous crimes where, everyone agrees right across the world that this is horrendous, this is criminal, and this needs to be removed. I am concerned we've seen sort of signs of some of the tech companies really going backwards and not taking their responsibility seriously enough. That's why it's so important we've got the Online Safety Act coming in later this year. And we're clear, Peter Kyle has said, nothing's off the table. We are ready to go further. We will take stronger action, as we're doing with this new laws around AI, in order to keep children safe.
How comfortable are you that the tech bros are so close to Donald Trump and that they seem heavily committed to cutting red tape and regulation?
Well, look, technology is part of how we grow our economies. It's part of everyday life. But it's also an issue around security and safety. And so the approach that we're taking is that safety should be built in from the start. This is part, things like AI, things like the technology, they affect all aspects of all of our lives every single day. But just as when we think, on the streets and in our communities, we think about the things that you need to do that are positive, they're about opportunities, and also the things you need to do to keep people safe. We have to do the same in the online world as we do offline. So, of course, that means governments are going to work with tech companies on where there are opportunities, but there's also got to be safeguards and regulation in place as well.
You are talking today about your border security, asylum and immigration bill. But your opposite number, the Shadow Home Secretary, Chris Philp, he says that you're actually going to water down existing regulations and make it easier for people to get the right to remain here who come in illegally. And also, you're not going to enforce age tests on people to see if they're 18 or not. What do you say to that?
Yeah, that is just total rubbish from Conservative Party that completely failed and just lost control of our borders across the board. They introduced a bill that they couldn't even bring into force. They couldn't even operationalize it. They couldn't even commence it because it was such a mess and full of so many contradictions. We are having to clear up that mess now. There are long-standing rules that prevent illegal migrants, prevent people arriving illegally from getting citizenship, and we're actually strengthening those rules. We have age assessment systems in place, and that's important. Those are all continuing. So this is just total nonsense from the Conservatives. What we are doing is removing some of the chaotic legislation that was actually making things worse, that was ending up having people entering the asylum system and staying forever because they were never taking any decisions on those cases because you couldn't, because their law was in such a mess that was massively pushing up the asylum hotels, the asylum backlog. We're having to sort out the chaos in the system step by step. And at the heart of the legislation that we're bringing in is bringing in new counter-terror style powers to be able to go after the criminal gangs who are organising these dangerous boats.
Yeah, okay, but will people who claim to be under 18 but who refuse to undergo tests, will they lose what the Conservatives say was automatically being excluded from any rights in this country?
No, that was just one of the things that they said to get headlines. They never operationalised all of the stuff that the Conservatives were talking about. This was not actually working laws. No, it wasn't, and it wasn't. A lot of these things, they were not actually operationalised. So what we are doing is being clear that there are age assessment arrangements in place. That means, of course, there are different arrangements for under 18s that have long been.
No, but it's a question of who is under 18.
If you are over 18. Then you need to be treated as such. And there are age assessment systems in place, and there will continue to be so, and rightly so. What we're not going to do is have this sort of chaotic legislation that the Conservatives brought in, that they never brought into force and they never operationalised because they got things into such a mess. We're actually doing things in practice that they never did.
One of the things that apparently you want to make criminal is people who resist being arrested while they're in French waters so they can come into British waters. I just wonder how you can possibly enforce something like that.
So I think what you're talking about is the issue around endangerment. We're bringing in a stronger law around endangerment of life at sea. And this is to address that. We've had cases where we have had these overcrowded boats, flimsy boats, where huge numbers of people are piled onto these flimsy boats, organised by people smugglers who are making huge profits from doing so. And there's been children and women crushed to death in the middle of these boats. When the French rescue authorities have tried to rescue people, they have managed to rescue some people, but others have just refused and continue to cross the channel. Well, I think we have to make sure people are held to account. If they are complicit in the endangerment of life, if they're complicit in children being crushed to death, there have to be new offences in place for us to be able to take that action. So that's why we are strengthening the law. We're working very closely with France. We've substantially increased our cooperation with France around law enforcement. They are strengthening some of the enforcement arrangements along the coast. We're also working with Germany on strengthening their law so they can go after the warehouses. So we're doing the two things together, is strengthening our laws, but also cooperating much more closely with other European countries. So they're strengthening their laws as well.
Yeah, but what I'm suggesting is you can't enforce laws on what people may or may not have done while they're in French waters, can you?
So some of what it does is it allows us to collect things like the video evidence and so on, even of things that have happened in French waters, if they are contributing to the loss of life or to the threats to life for people who then ultimately arrive in the UK. We are clear we need to be able to take action in the UK, even if the threat to life happened in French waters. If they do so on a journey to the UK, on an illegal journey that is dangerous, that they should not be making, then we're clear we should be able to prosecute them in the UK as well.
As you know, there's been a poll this week on capital punishment suggesting that the public is in favour of capital punishment, which was stopped in this country 60 years ago. Wouldn't it at least be democratic to have another debate about that?
I think that's not something that we've had in this country for a very long time. And I think that's right. And that's the case in many other countries as well. So I think that's not a debate that we're having.
And relevant perhaps to that is the Lucy Letby case. Are you concerned about the mounting doubts which some people are expressing about her convictions?
So I think you'll recognise, obviously, as Home Secretary, I can't comment on an individual case that's where there's obviously operational independence of the policing, operational independence of the prosecutors, and also an independent court process. As you know, we do have ways of different legal processes and appeals and things like that. But the British traditions that we have around the way the rule of law works in the UK is that as Home Secretary, individual cases like this are not ones that I can comment on.
But I think it is ultimately your decision, isn't it, whether these things are reopened?
No, these are independent matters rather than for the Home Secretary.
OK, I stand corrected. Thank you very much indeed, Yvette Cooper.
Thanks, Adam.